It started with a headache, but it ended with betrayal. I was 36 when my life began to fall apart, not because of age, but because of diagnosis. They said it was multiple sclerosis, an autoimmune disease that would slowly take away my strength, my balance, even my ability to walk one day. I was terrified. But even in that terror, I turned to the man who had always promised to stand by me, my husband Brandon. We had been married for 9 years, and for the most part, they were good ones. Or at least that's what I thought. Brandon was charming, successful, and people always said, "You're lucky to have him." But they didn't see the other side. They didn't see how he hated vulnerability, how any weakness in others made him withdraw. When I told him about the diagnosis, sitting on our cream sofa, my hands trembling, his reaction wasn't what I expected. He didn't hug me. He didn't ask questions. He simply stared for a moment and then said, "So, what does this mean for our lifestyle?" That sentence never left me. Not "Are you okay?" Not "We'll get through this." Just "Our lifestyle." I tried to stay strong, for myself, and for our daughter Sophie, who was only 6 at the time. But Brandon began disappearing. Emotionally at first, avoiding conversations, staying out late for work, and eventually, physically too. Business trips turned into unexplained absences. One night, after yet another missed dinner, I checked his iPad, something I'd never done before. And there it was. A message that read, "She's getting worse. I can't deal with this anymore. I need someone who's not broken." It was sent to Trish, his coworker, the same woman who sat across from him at company dinners. The same woman who had brought our daughter birthday gifts. I stared at the screen for minutes, frozen. This was beyond betrayal. This was abandonment. He was already making his exit, quietly and selfishly. The next morning, Brandon walked into the kitchen and told me he needed space to think. I asked him one question. "Did you ever love me, or just the version of me who could dance at parties and pour you wine?" He didn't answer. He just packed a bag, kissed our daughter on the forehead, and left. That was the day I broke. But I didn't break down. I broke open. White heavy check mark. After Brandon walked out, the silence in our house felt like a second betrayal. It wasn't just that he left, it was how easily he walked away. As if I were an old coat he'd outgrown. But I wasn't going to let that be the final version of my story. I began to build myself again, piece by fragile piece. The first few weeks were brutal. I struggled with daily tasks, my muscles weak, my spirit even weaker. There were moments I couldn't even button Sophie's school uniform. I remember her tiny hands helping me, whispering, "It's okay, Mommy. You're my superhero." That broke me more than Brandon ever could. Doctors, appointments, medication, they all became my new normal. I sold my designer handbags and canceled our gym memberships. Brandon had cut off joint credit cards, and his support was now reduced to a court-ordered minimum that barely covered groceries. But I had something he didn't, resilience born from pain. I decided to restart my freelance writing career from scratch. I wrote parenting blogs, ghost wrote wellness articles, and even picked up copywriting for local brands. Each dollar earned felt like a victory. Each day without crying over him felt like progress. I enrolled in physical therapy. Twice a week, I pushed my limits even when it hurt. Some days I fell. But others, I stood a little longer than before. I started documenting my journey on a small blog, still standing strong. People connected. Emails poured in. I wasn't just surviving. I was becoming a symbol of fight and fire for thousands of women. One of my blog posts went viral. He left me when I got sick. I'm building a life he'll never deserve. It reached over 2 million views in a week. A women's health brand reached out. They wanted me as their ambassador for an upcoming campaign on strength after struggle. There would be press, interviews, and a national television feature. Guess who they were working with for their ad production? Trish. Yes. That Trish. She was now doing brand consulting after leaving Brandon's firm, probably to keep their affair off company radar. When we met in a Zoom meeting, her face turned white. She recognized me immediately. I kept my tone professional. Hi, Trish. Looking forward to collaborating. Oh, and tell Brandon I said hello. It's been a while. She fumbled over her words. I learned during that campaign that Trish and Brandon were engaged. They were planning a lavish wedding in 6 months, paid for, in part, by Brandon's misused company funds and investments made using my identity. Yes. He had used my SSN to get a low-interest medical loan, claiming I was still his dependent even after separation. And I had the paper trail to prove it. I could have reported him quietly. But I wanted the world to see what a man looks like when the woman he left behind becomes unstoppable. Police car light. It was almost poetic. The brand that once fired me for being too sick to manage campaigns had now chosen me as the face of resilience. Our first in-person shoot was scheduled at a studio downtown. Trish would be managing the production. Brandon, I'd heard, would stop by briefly, probably to flex. I was ready. In the weeks leading up to the shoot, I had quietly gathered everything. Bank records of the fraudulent medical loan under my name. Screenshots of emails Brandon sent using my information post-separation. A notarized letter from a financial rep confirming Brandon claimed me as a dependent on documents months after our split. And the most damning piece, a voice message Brandon accidentally left, where he told someone, "She's too sick to fight back. I just need this money till the wedding. Then I'll figure out the legal stuff." He was stealing, lying, and betting on my silence. But the old me was gone. At the studio, I walked in with confidence, dressed in a power suit, hair done, posture tall. Trish spotted me first. Her eyes darted to Brandon, who had just entered behind her. "Clara," she said, forcing a smile. "Trish," I replied coolly. "Nice to see you again." "And Brandon." "Still pretending I don't exist?" He smirked. "Just here to support the project." I nodded, then looked directly into the nearby camera, which was rolling for behind-the-scenes content. Perfect. because what I was about to do needed to be recorded. Before we start, I just want to clear something up. I walked over to the creative director. Do you mind rolling? I want full transparency. Trish's expression faltered. Brandon's face twitched. I handed over a crisp, white folder. This contains proof that Brandon Stone has committed identity fraud, using my name for medical loans, filing insurance claims, all after he abandoned me during a medical crisis. A hush fell. I turned to the camera. I have spent the past year rebuilding myself from ground zero. Alone. And while he was planning a wedding with my best friend, he was also committing federal crimes in my name. Trish tried to cut in. I didn't know. I didn't accuse you, I said, calm but sharp. Yet. 2 days later, Brandon was served. Official charges were filed for fraud, identity theft, and misrepresentation in financial documents. His job let him go instantly. His face, thanks to the viral video from the shoot, had become internet infamy. I didn't post it. But someone on the crew did, titled, "Yellow Circle She Confronted Her Cheating Ex on Camera." Then dropped this bombshell. 4.3 million views in 48 hours. Public humiliation? Check. Trish tried to distance herself fast. She called me, her voice trembling. I swear I didn't know he was still using your info. He said everything was handled. Please don't drag me into this. I won't, I said. If you help me. She hesitated. You want him exposed, Trish? Help me gather what he's hiding. Emails, accounts, wedding plans. If he lied to me, he's probably lying to you too. The next morning, she emailed me a PDF. Subject: Things you should see before the wedding. It was a goldmine. Hidden offshore account details. Plans to flip my old insurance into their new business. And a prenup draft he had her sign, with identical language from ours. He was using the same manipulation script again. They were still planning to go through with it. The wedding wasn't called off, yet. They'd toned it down from a grand ballroom affair to a private celebration at a vineyard. I had no plans of going. Until Trish texted me the day before. He's still going through with it. Come. Sit in the back. You'll want to hear what I say at the altar. The Vineyard Showdown. A public confession at the altar. How I ended Brandon's reputation forever. I couldn't let it go on any longer. Brandon and Trish had tried to put a perfect facade together, planning their little intimate wedding at a vineyard, trying to make it seem like nothing was wrong. The couple, the perfect new beginning, but I knew the truth. I thought about what Trish had told me the day before, about how she was going to speak up at the altar. There was a part of me that feared she might change her mind. I didn't want to risk waiting and finding out I was too late. But I also knew that my plan to expose him at the last moment would hit harder than anything else. It was almost unreal. The vineyard looked gorgeous. The air smelled of fresh roses and aged wood. The guests were milling about, sipping on wine, chatting. They had no idea what was about to unfold. I stood just outside the venue, staring at it through the vines. The place was brimming with people, including my family, my friends. All the people Brandon had betrayed for months. I took a deep breath. This wasn't just for me. This was for all of us, all the people he had hurt. I stepped inside. The music stopped. Brandon's face twisted when he saw me. His mouth went dry, his eyes grew wide with disbelief. There I was, not the broken woman he had discarded, not the sick girl he thought he could leave behind, but a woman in control, standing tall, ready to destroy him in front of everyone. Brandon's eyes darted nervously around the room as I walked toward the altar. Guests whispered, some even stood up, clearly unsure if this was a prank or part of the ceremony. I saw Trish, standing at the back, her face pale but determined. She knew exactly what was happening. I smiled at her, nodded slightly. She was the key to this entire plan. The officiant looked flustered. Can I help you? I'm here to stop this, I said calmly. My voice was clear and strong. No shaking, no hesitation. Brandon, you thought you could leave me, steal my money, lie to me, and then marry my best friend as though everything was fine. But you couldn't be more wrong. The officiant looked uncomfortable, glancing at Trish, whose gaze was fixed on the ground. I turned to the crowd. I don't think you all understand the full picture. But today, I'm going to make it crystal clear. I glanced at Trish, whose eyes were locked on mine. She stood up slowly, walking towards the altar. As she stood beside me, I saw her eyes start to well with tears. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Trish finally cracked under the weight of the truth. She knew it was time to speak out. She reached for my hand and whispered, "I can't believe I let him manipulate me." She turned to face the guests. Everything Clara said is true. Brandon didn't just leave her when she was sick. He used her identity, her trust, everything. He was stealing money from her, lying about his intentions, and I was too blind to see it. The room fell into stunned silence. Everyone, including the family members who had doubted me, were now realizing the depth of Brandon's betrayal. "I'm sorry, Clara," Trish said, tears flowing freely now. "You were right, and I was wrong." Brandon, as expected, was furious. His face flushed red with anger as he tried to maintain control. His voice, usually so steady and confident, was now faltering. "You don't know what you're talking about," he shouted, stepping forward. "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied, walking toward him. "You're a liar, and today is the day I end this game." I pulled out the papers from my bag and slammed them on the altar. "This is the prenup you tried to hide. This is the financial fraud you thought I would never discover. This is your betrayal." Brandon recoiled, his hands shaking. Trish was beside me, supporting me every step of the way. I motioned for the videographer, who was standing off to the side, to come closer. I knew this was the moment we had all been waiting for. This was the ultimate proof. "I've been recording this entire thing," I said with a slight grin. "Every word you've said, every lie you've tried to weave. Let's see how well you explain yourself to the world. The camera zoomed in as Brandon's face twisted into disbelief, realizing that everything he tried to cover up was being captured. Trish walked to the microphone, her hands trembling. I never thought this day would come, but here we are. She paused, her voice cracking slightly. I never thought I would betray my best friend. And I never thought I would watch this man destroy her life. But here it is. Trish continued, giving her full confession. She explained how Brandon had been manipulating her too, making false promises, and hiding things from her. I'm sorry, Clara. I can't take back what I did, but I can make it right. By now, the guests were no longer looking at Brandon as the charming groom-to-be. They saw him for what he truly was, a fraud. A liar. A thief. Brandon stood frozen, his mind clearly working overtime to come up with an excuse, a way to salvage his dignity. But there was nothing he could say that would fix the mess he had made. I should have never doubted you, Trish said to me quietly, her words barely audible in the tense silence. But I'm here now. And I'm with you, every step of the way. I walked away from the altar, head held high. Brandon followed, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to hear what he had to say anymore. I had won. And not only had I won my own dignity back, but I had exposed him for who he truly was in front of everyone. Within hours, the video went viral. News outlets picked it up, and Brandon's face became a symbol of deceit. His reputation, his career, everything he had built for himself came crashing down. Weeks later, Brandon was served with charges of identity theft, financial fraud, and false representation. His career in finance was over, his name tarnished. He was forced to pay back every penny he had stolen, and he was left with nothing. His wedding to Trish was called off. No one wanted to be associated with him anymore. As for me, I had my comeback. I found a new passion in advocating for women's rights and financial independence. I spoke publicly about how women often faced financial manipulation in relationships, and how important it was to protect ourselves. You can't control how life treats you, I said in an interview months later, but you can control how you respond. I chose to take my life back.